They said no one ever left the Hartwell Mansion the same, not even alive. The story begins with John Hartwell, a man with sharp eyes and sharper secrets. A man whose smile hid horrors no one could imagine. The mansion itself was a warning, old, towering and wrapped in fog. The townsfolk called it cursed. Children dared each other to peek through the broken windows. They never stayed long. Some never laughed again. Eleanor was the first wife. She was young, bright, full of hope. She arrived in the middle of autumn, when the air smelled of dead leaves and wet earth. John greeted her with charm and grace. A gentleman, the townsfolk whispered. But charm can hide darkness. At first, everything seemed perfect. Eleanor laughed in the sunlight streaming through the tall windows. She arranged flowers in vases. She explored the mansion, fascinated by its history. Then the whispers began, soft, faint, like someone calling her name. At first, Eleanor thought she imagined it, a trick of the wind. But the whispers grew louder at night, echoing through the hallways. Through the walls, objects moved. Books fell from shelves, doors slammed shut. And in the mirror, Eleanor saw shadows that weren't hers. She told John. He listened. He nodded. He promised it would stop. But it didn't. Eleanor began to change. Her laughter faded. Her eyes grew hollow. She spoke to people who weren't there. Sometimes she screamed. The neighbors reported strange noises. Footsteps in empty rooms. Faint cries in the dead of night. And then, one morning, she was gone. Not missing. Not vanished. Just insane, raving. Unable to recognize reality, John did not seem surprised. He watched her crumble. Some said he took pleasure in it. Some said he whispered secrets to the shadows, secrets only the house could hear. Weeks later, he found another wife, another young woman, another hopeful heart. He courted her with the same charm. The mansion welcomed her with its cold walls and creaking floors. And the whispers began again. The second wife, Margaret, noticed the strange patterns immediately. Her friends warned her about the house. She laughed at their fear. She thought it was superstition. She was wrong. At night she would hear Eleanor's voice, calling her from the dark corners of the mansion. She would find doors open that she knew she had locked, candles extinguished in cold gusts of wind, and the shadows. They moved when no one was there. Margaret tried to leave. She tried to flee the mansion. But something held her back, a sense of dread she could not explain, a feeling that the house itself had claimed her. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and slowly she changed. Eyes vacant, hands trembling, laughter gone. She became a shadow of herself, just like Eleanor before her. John's smile never faded. He remained calm, composed, observing, as if the madness was part of a ritual, as if it had always been planned. By now, the townsfolk whispered openly. 5 wives, all young, all gone insane. A pattern that chilled the bones of even the bravest men. But the mansion held more secrets. Secrets buried deeper than anyone dared to imagine. And John Hartwell, he was the keeper of those secrets. It was said that the house fed on hope, on love, on the innocence of women who dared to trust. And it left nothing behind but madness. The first 2 wives were only the beginning. The horrors had just begun, and the town, terrified, watched from afar. They could hear screams in the dead of night, but no one dared enter. Eleanor and Margaret, 2 souls trapped in a spiral of terror, their stories intertwined with shadows and whispers. And the mansion waited silently for the next bride. John Hartwell's secrets were darker than anyone could imagine. The truth behind the madness of his wives would shock anyone who dared look too closely, but no one could stop the cycle. The mansion demanded obedience. The wives were its prey, and soon another young woman would arrive, another bright-eyed soul, another story of terror. The Hartwell Mansion was alive, and it was hungry. If you want to uncover the full chilling story of the Hartwell family, hit like, share this video, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe to join the journey into darkness. The mansion never slept. It waited. Margaret was gone. Eleanor was gone. 2 bright lives consumed by shadows. But John Hartwell, he was calm, almost eager. The 3rd wife, Lillian, arrived on a stormy night. Rain pounded against the mansion's walls. Lightning split the sky. The air smelled of wet earth and something older. Something rotten. She was warned by the townsfolk. "Don't go in there," they said. "The Hartwell Mansion? It's cursed," she laughed. "You sound like children scared of shadows," she said, but Lillian had no idea what awaited her. From the moment she stepped inside, the mansion whispered her name. Softly at first, then louder, eerie voices slithering through the hallways. Shadows moved along the walls, stretching unnaturally. At night, Lillian couldn't sleep. Footsteps echoed in empty corridors. The chandeliers swung even though no wind blew. And in the mirror, she saw faces that weren't hers. John watched, always calm, always observing, sometimes smiling. The mansion seemed to obey him. Weeks passed. Lillian's laughter faded. Her once bright eyes dimmed. She began talking to the shadows. She muttered names no one else knew. One night she screamed. Terrible, ear-piercing screams. Neighbors said it sounded like someone was being torn apart. But when they came close, silence. The mansion held its secrets tightly. Lillian tried to escape. She ran through hallways, doors slamming behind her. But the mansion was endless. Rooms twisted, corridors shifted. It was as if the house itself refused to let her leave. And then the fourth wife arrived. A young woman named Rose, naive, curious. She didn't know the mansion's history. She didn't know the fate of the women before her. And she certainly didn't know John Hartwell. At first, Rose thought the house was strange, old, eerie, but charming in a twisted way. John courted her with smiles and elegance. The mansion welcomed her as if it had been waiting, but shadows crept into her mind. Voices whispered secrets she couldn't understand. Objects moved without reason. Doors locked and unlocked themselves. Sometimes, she felt hands brush against her in the dark. But no one was there. The previous wife's fates haunted her. She discovered Eleanor's diary, hidden beneath the floorboards. Pages filled with fear, despair, and whispers of shadows. Margaret's letters, smeared with ink and tears. Stories of madness, screams, and unending terror. Rose realized the truth. It wasn't just the mansion. It was John Hartwell, or something he had awakened. By now, the town's rumors were growing. The Hartwell Mansion devours women, they said. But still no one dared step inside. The mansion's grip was too strong. Its darkness too consuming. Rose tried to resist. She fought the voices. She tried to leave. But the mansion, it had her. It whispered promises. It twisted reality. It showed visions of her loved ones, calling her name. Begging her to stay, days turned into nights, nights into weeks. And slowly, Rose began to change. Eyes hollow, lips trembling, murmurs escaping her mouth at odd hours. The mansion fed on fear, on hope, on love. Every wife who entered became a shadow of herself. John Hartwell's role remained a mystery. Was he a villain, a prisoner, or something far older than human? The town watched from afar. They heard screams echoing through the fog. But the mansion remained untouched, untouchable, alive. By the end of her first month, Rose was different. She walked silently through the halls. She no longer questioned the shadows. She no longer screamed at the voices. She was beginning to understand the mansion and its hunger, but the story was far from over. The fifth wife had yet to arrive, and with her, the darkest secrets of the Hartwell family would finally come to light. The mansion waited, patient, relentless, hungry. The Hartwell family's curse wasn't just a tale. It was real. And the next chapter would be far worse. If you want to uncover the full chilling story of all 5 wives, hit like, share this video, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe to dive deeper into the dark secrets of the Hartwell Mansion. The mansion had grown restless. It smelled of damp wood and despair. The shadows were thicker now, moving like living things across the halls. Rose had been inside for weeks. Her hair hung in tangled strands. Her eyes were wide, but empty. She walked the mansion silently, listening to whispers that no one else could hear. It was then that the fifth wife arrived. Her name was Clara, fresh from the city, bright, curious, full of life. She had no idea the house had been waiting for her. From the moment she stepped through the door, she felt it. a chill that ran straight to her bones. The air itself seemed to pulse around her. Something was alive in the mansion, something hungry. John Hartwell greeted her. The same calm smile, the same elegance, but in his eyes, a glint of something dark, something ancient. Clara was charmed. She thought she could navigate the mansion's secrets. She thought she could uncover the truth. She thought she could escape. She was wrong. That night she heard the whispers. Not just voices, but words she understood. Clara, stay. Forever. The shadows moved closer, stretching along the walls. Fingers of darkness curling toward her. She saw the other wives, or at least their shadows. Eleanor, Margaret, Lillian, and Rose. They were twisted and hollow. Eyes vacant, mouths whispering to the dark. They reached for her, begging, warning. Calling her name, Clara began to uncover the pattern. It wasn't random. It wasn't accidents. 5 wives, each arriving with hope, each descending into madness, each trapped by the mansion. And by John Hartwell, she found Eleanor's diary. The pages were torn, ink smudged. But the words were clear. Do not trust him. The shadows obey him. The house is alive. It wants more. Margaret's letters told of hallucinations, of rooms changing, of voices speaking secrets no human could know. Lillian's story was worse. She spoke of visions of fire, of blood on the walls, of John whispering to the shadows. Rose was the worst. She had vanished completely. All that remained was her shadow, wandering the halls. Clara realized with horror, the mansion was not just a house. It was a prison. It was alive. It fed on hope, on love, on life itself. Clara tried to resist. She moved through the halls carefully. She avoided mirrors. She avoided shadows. But it was impossible. John watched, calm, patient. The mansion bent around him. Doors closed before she reached them. Windows refused to open. Rooms shifted while she slept. The shadows whispered constantly. Join us, be free, see the truth. Clara's mind began to unravel. Visions of past wives haunted her dreams. She saw their deaths, their madness, their despair. And she knew she was next. One night Clara confronted John. Why them? She asked. Why the women? He smiled. It is the Hartwell way, he said. The mansion chooses. A guide, but it decides. It has always been this way. Clara realized the truth. John was not just a man. He was a guardian, or a prisoner himself. The mansion had bound him, and in return, he offered new souls. The 5th wife's descent began quickly, at first subtle, whispers in her sleep, shadows moving just beyond her vision. The nightmares, vivid and terrifying. She woke screaming. Doors slammed, candles flickered. She tried to leave. She ran through hallways. But the mansion had no end. Rooms twisted. Corridors looped back. It was a trap. The other wives' shadows appeared, reaching out. Eleanor's face twisted in silent screams. Margaret's eyes pleaded. Lillian's lips moved. Whispering secrets, Rose. She vanished into the darkness completely. Clara felt the mansion feeding on her fear. Her heart pounded. Her breath quickened. The walls themselves seemed to pulse. Then she found it. A hidden room, filled with relics, photographs, and journals. All the previous wives' possessions. All the evidence of their descent. She understood the full horror. John Hartwell had not just married them. He had guided them into the mansion's trap. And the mansion, it consumed them. But the 5th wife, Clara, she was different. She did not scream. She did not surrender immediately. She studied the mansion. She observed the shadows. She learned the rhythm of the house, and in that moment, she realized something terrifying. The mansion could be fought, but the cost would be unimaginable. John Hartwell watched silently, his calm demeanor hiding centuries of knowledge. The mansion itself seemed to hum around him. And Clara, she was about to make the choice, stay and join the shadows, or confront the Hartwell curse. The story was far from over. The mansion had more secrets, and the 5th wife's fate would decide the end of the Hartwell legacy. The darkness waited, patient, relentless, hungry. You want to see the shocking conclusion of the Hartwell family and the fate of all 5 wives. Hit like, share this video, comment your theories, and subscribe to uncover the mansion's darkest secrets. The mansion was alive. It breathed. It watched. It hungered. Clara knew she had little time. The shadows had grown bold. They whispered constantly, circling her mind. "Join us. Be free. Stay forever." Her heart pounded. Her hands shook. But she did not scream. She would not be consumed. Not yet. The mansion revealed itself fully that night. Walls shifted. Floors groaned. Stairs twisted into impossible angles. Rooms doubled back on themselves. Mirrors reflected not reality, but madness. The first shadow appeared. Eleanor. Her hollow eyes stared into Clara's soul. Her lips moved silently. A warning, a plea, a curse, then Margaret. Her twisted figure gliding along the walls, whispering secrets that made Clara shiver. Lillian and Rose followed, their forms flickering in and out of sight. They were no longer fully alive and not fully dead. They were the mansion's echo, its victims, its warnings. John Hartwell appeared, calm, elegant, his eyes cold. He extended his hand. "Do you understand now?" he asked. "The mansion chooses. A guide, but it is alive. It demands sacrifice. It feeds on despair." Clara did. She understood fully the horror of the mansion, the fate of the 5 wives, the reason for the whispers, the reason for the madness. But she also understood one more thing. The mansion could be fought. She moved carefully, each step measured, each breath controlled. She avoided shadows, dodged mirrors, and ignored the whispers. Her mind had to remain clear. The mansion lashed out. Doors slammed. Floors buckled. The walls themselves pressed in. Shadows lunged at her, trying to pull her into darkness. Clara screamed. Not in fear, but in defiance. She ran. She climbed the twisting stairs. She entered rooms that seemed to vanish behind her. She found the heart of the mansion. There in the center lay a strange relic, an old chest carved with symbols she did not understand. Inside, journals of every wife, objects they had held dear, evidence of their lives, and their descent. The mansion trembled. It sensed her resolve. It tried to push her back. The shadows roared in fury. They lunged. They clawed at her mind. They whispered the names of her family, her friends, her fears, but Clara did not falter. She opened the chest. She read the final words of Eleanor. She traced Margaret's letters. She understood the mansion's logic, its weakness, and then she did the unthinkable. She spoke the names of all the wives aloud. She acknowledged their pain. She acknowledged the mansion's hunger. She acknowledged John Hartwell. The shadows screamed. The walls shook violently. The mansion groaned. Floors cracked, and then silence. Eleanor, Margaret, Lillian, and Rose appeared one last time, their forms flickering but their eyes peaceful. They smiled at Clara, and then they vanished. John Hartwell collapsed. The calm mask broken. The mansion's power had weakened. For the first time in decades, it trembled. Clara ran from the heart of the mansion. The doors no longer resisted. The walls no longer shifted. She emerged into the cold night. The air smelled of rain and earth, and freedom. The mansion still stood, silent, empty, but no longer alive in the same way. The curse had been broken. The town awoke to rumors. The Hartwell Mansion, quiet. The women, gone. The curse ended. Clara never returned, but she left behind the story, the truth of the Hartwell family, and the warning the mansion may rest. But darkness never fully dies. If you want to see the shocking conclusion of the Hartwell story, uncover the mansion's final secrets, and learn what truly became of John Hartwell, hit like, share this video, comment your thoughts, and subscribe so you don't miss the finale. The mansion stood silently under the pale moonlight. Fog wrapped around its crumbling walls. For decades it had whispered secrets. Now it waited for nothing. Clara had survived. The shadows, the horrors, the madness. She had faced them all, but survival came at a cost. Her hair was streaked with gray. Her hands trembled. Her eyes had seen too much. The townsfolk avoided the Hartwell Mansion still. They whispered her name. She is the one who escaped the curse, they said. But no one dared enter. Inside, John Hartwell was broken. The calm, composed patriarch was gone. The mansion had turned on him. It no longer obeyed. He had guided the wives into its hunger, and now he faced its wrath. The walls closed in. Floors cracked beneath his feet. Shadows clawed at his mind. He screamed. A sound so raw and human, it shook the mansion's foundations. Clara had watched from the threshold. She could see him trapped. No charm, no power. The mansion claimed him at last. His eyes, once sharp and cruel, filled with terror. The man who had orchestrated madness for decades was finally powerless. The shadows engulfed him. Not completely, not entirely, but enough to strip away the years of control. Enough to leave him screaming into the void. The mansion settled, quiet, still. It was not free. It never would be. But its hunger had been sated. For now, Clara approached the heart of the mansion one final time. The relics remained. The journals of Eleanor, Margaret, Lillian, and Rose. The letters, the diaries. The evidence of despair. She gathered them. She would preserve the truth. She would tell the world what happened here. The shadows flickered around her, whispered her name. But she did not falter. She had learned their rhythm. She had learned their weakness. She had learned how to survive. Outside, the first light of dawn broke through the fog. The air smelled of rain and damp earth. A new day, a new beginning. Clara never returned to the mansion. She left the town. She left the mansion behind. But she carried its weight. The knowledge, the horror. Over the years, stories of the Hartwell family spread. Some dismissed them as folklore. Some whispered that the mansion still waited, hungry, patient, ever vigilant. But Clara had one final warning. The mansion fed on hope, on love, on innocence. It had taken 5 wives. And it would take again. If ever challenged, John Hartwell was gone. His legacy, broken. But the mansion, it endured, a silent, looming threat over the town. Some say on foggy nights you can see shadows moving in the windows. Hear whispers carried on the wind. Feel a cold presence brush against your skin. The mansion remembers. It never forgets. And Clara, she lived with the memory. She carried the faces of the lost wives. Their voices echoed in her mind. A reminder that darkness exists, even in the brightest hearts. The townsfolk eventually rebuilt their lives. The Hartwell Mansion decayed slowly. Windows shattered, walls crumbled. Yet the shadows lingered, a faint pulse of the past, a promise that the story never truly ends. Clara told her story to a few she trusted, wrote down the journals, preserved the evidence, and warned, if you ever stumble upon a mansion at the edge of foggy woods, if it whispers your name, if the shadows move on their own, do not enter. Do not trust the smiles. Do not hope for charm. The mansion waits. It hungers. It remembers. And some say, if you listen carefully, you can still hear Eleanor's laughter, Margaret's whispers, Lillian's tears, Rose's vanished cries. The Hartwell family's curse ended with John. But the mansion never truly dies. Clara survived. The wives' stories were told. The mansion remained. And the darkness still waits. If you want to explore more chilling stories like the Hartwell family, uncover haunted secrets, and dive deep into the darkest tales ever told, hit like, share this video, comment your thoughts, and subscribe. Don't miss the next story that could keep you up at night.